The first-class cabin was quiet in the way expansive spaces always were, padded with soft lighting, low voices, and the steady hum of the aircraft engines preparing for departure. People sat with headphones on, glasses of juice resting on fold-out tables, eyes half closed in practiced comfort. In seats 2A and 2B sat Moloch and Jordan Reed, bros, ages 10 and 8, dressed neatly in matching gray hoodies and clean sneakers. Between them sat their older sister Nia, 16, holding their boarding passes tightly in both hands. Nia had flown before, but never like this. Their father had surprised them that morning, smiling in that calm, unreadable way he had, handing over 3 first-class tickets without explanation. He had hugged them at security, promised he would see them after landing, and disappeared into the crowd. Nia didn't ask questions. With their father, answers always came later. As passengers settled, a flight attendant stopped in the aisle beside them. She was tall, blonde, perfectly pressed uniform, her smile polite but strained. She looked at the boys, then at Nia, then back at the seats. Her eyes lingered too long. "I'm going to need to see your boarding passes," she said. Nia handed them over immediately. The attendant studied them, frowned slightly, then glanced around the cabin. "There seems to be a mistake," she said. Nia's stomach tightened. "What kind of mistake?" "These seats are first class," the attendant replied slowly, as if explaining something obvious. "Children usually aren't seated here without an adult." "They're with me," Nia said. "I'm their sister." The attendant smiled and returned. "Are your parents on board?" "Our father booked the tickets," Nia said. "These are our seats." The attendant pursed her lips. "I'll need to confirm this." She walked away, and whispers began almost instantly. A man across the aisle glanced over his newspaper. A woman a few rows ahead turned her head, curiosity sharp in her eyes. Malik leaned closer to Nia. "Did we do something wrong?" he whispered. "No," Nia said quickly. "You're fine." But she wasn't sure she believed it. The attendant returned with another crew member, older, darker uniform, eyes already skeptical. They examined the boarding passes together. "These seats are quite expensive," the second attendant said. "Sometimes people get confused when boarding." Nia felt heat rush to her face. "We're not confused." The first attendant tilted her head. "Sweetheart, we just need to make sure you're supposed to be here." Jordan shifted in his seat. "Why wouldn't we be?" The question hung there, unanswered. A silence spread, thick and uncomfortable. Other passengers watched openly now. No one said anything. The attendants exchanged looks. "Until we verify," the first attendant said. "I'll need you to move to economy." Nia's hands clenched. "No, I'm sorry," the attendant said. "No," Nia repeated, louder now. "We paid for these seats." The second attendant's voice hardened. "Lower your tone." That was when Nia noticed her hands shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. She pulled out her phone and began recording. "Please explain," she said steadily, "why you're asking 3 black kids to leave their assigned seats." The attendants stiffened. "Ma'am," the first one said sharply, "you're being disruptive." "I'm asking a question," Nia replied. Before either could respond, a calm voice came from behind them. "That won't be necessary." Both attendants turned. A man stood in the aisle, tall, composed, dressed simply in a dark coat and watch that caught the light when he moved. His presence alone shifted the air. "Sir," the second attendant said, "this is a crew matter." The man smiled faintly. "I don't think it is." He looked at Nia and the boys. Moloch's eyes widened. "Dan!" Passengers gasped softly. "Yes," the man said, resting a hand on Moloch's shoulder. "I'm their father." The first attendant froze. "These are my children," he continued calmly. "Those are their seats. I booked them myself. We didn't realize," the attendant stammered. "No," he said gently. "You didn't?" The second attendant cleared her throat. "Sir, there was just a concern about what?" he asked. She hesitated. The silence answered for her. The man nodded slowly. "I see." He turned to the watching cabin. "For those curious, my name is Daniel Reed. I sit on this airline's board." A ripple of shock moved through the passengers. "I fly anonymously," Daniel continued, "because I like to see how things really work." The attendants went pale. "You were very quick," Daniel said, looking back at them, "to assume my children didn't belong here." I sincerely apologize, the first attendant said, voice shaking. Daniil didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Apologies don't undo lessons taught, he said, but they can start accountability. He looked at Nia. You did well? She swallowed hard, nodding. Daniel turned back to the attendants. I suggest you inform the captain of what just happened. Yes, sir, they whispered. As they hurried away, the cabin stayed silent. Then, slowly, people began to look away, embarrassed, thoughtful, unsettled. Daniel sat beside his children. Jordan leaned against him. Are we in trouble? Jordan asked. Daniel smiled softly. No, you did nothing wrong. Malik looked up. Why didn't they believe us? Daniel met his eyes. Because some people see before they think. The plane pushed back from the gate. Outside, the city blurred. Nia stopped recording and wiped her face. I was scared, she admitted. Daniel nodded. Bravery usually feels like that. A flight attendant returned. Different this time, eyes respectful. Mr. Reed, the captain sends his apologies. Daniel inclined his head. Thank you. She turned to the children. Can I get you anything? Malik smiled. Apple juice. As the plane lifted into the sky, the tension finally eased. Clouds stretched endlessly below them. Nia looked out the window, heart still racing. She knew she would remember this flight forever, not for the seats, but for the moment they learned they never had to prove they belonged. They already did. The plane climbed higher, the city shrinking into a patchwork of light and shadow beneath the clouds. Malik pressed his forehead to the window, watching the world fall away, while Jordan focused on the tray table, carefully lining up sugar packets as if order itself might anchor him. Nia leaned back for the first time since boarding, exhaustion washing over her now that the danger had passed. Daniel watched his children quietly. Moments like this were why he flew this way, why he tested systems instead of trusting reports. Policies on paper never told the full story. People did. You okay back there? He asked gently. Nia nodded. I think so. I just didn't expect it. No one ever does, Daniel replied. That's how assumptions work. They arrive unannounced. Malik turned from the window. Did they do that to you too? Daniel considered the question carefully. Sometimes, he said, just less openly. Jordan frowned. Why? Because when people see power, Daniel explained, they become careful. But when they don't see it, they become comfortable, showing who they are. Jordan absorbed this silently, then pushed a sugar packet toward Malik so their lines stayed even. Across the aisle, the man with the newspaper lowered it again, his expression thoughtful. After a moment, he leaned slightly toward Daniel. I owe you an apology, the man said quietly. I saw what was happening and didn't say anything. Daniel met his eyes. Thank you for saying that now. I should have spoken up, the man added. Yes, Daniel agreed calmly. You should have. The man nodded, accepting it, then leaned back, humbled. Further up the cabin, a woman wiped her eyes discreetly. She had watched the entire exchange, remembered moments from her own childhood when adults questioned her place in quiet ways. She reached into her bag, pulled out a wrapped chocolate, and later passed it back to Malik with a shy smile. Malik accepted it like a gift from a stranger who had learned something. Service resumed, but it felt different now. Every interaction carried awareness. The crew moved with extra care, voices softer, eyes more deliberate. Not fear, but attention. Nia glanced at her father. You really sit on the board? Daniel smiled slightly. Yes. So this was a test, she asked. In part, he said, but mostly it was a family trip. She laughed weakly. That's one way to travel. Daniel leaned closer. Listen to me, he said quietly. What happened wasn't your responsibility to fix. You shouldn't have to prove your right to exist in a space, but I'm proud of how you handled it. Her eyes filled. I was angry. You were supposed to be, he said. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane leveled off. Malik dozed against Daniel's arm, the chocolate forgotten in his lap. Jordan eventually abandoned his sugar packets and closed his eyes to their earlier anxiety fading into sleep. Nia stayed awake, replaying the moment again and again. The looks, the words, the silence. She realized the most painful part hadn't been the accusation, but how quickly everyone else had accepted it as reasonable. How normal it had seemed. She pulled her phone back out, watching the recording once more, then locked the screen. She didn't know yet what she would do with it, but she knew it mattered. Hours later, as the plane began its descent, Daniel felt a familiar resolve settle in his chest. He had joined the board to change numbers, policies, procedures. But moments like this demanded something deeper. When the captain announced landing, applause broke out softly. The children stirred. "Did we win?" Malik asked sleepily. Daniel smiled. "This wasn't a game." Jordan yawned. "Felt like one." Nia looked between them, then out the window at the approaching runway. "It wasn't fair," she said quietly. "No," Daniel agreed. "But fairness doesn't appear on its own. It has to be insisted upon." The wheels touched down. As the plane taxied, Daniel noticed the original attendants standing near the front, faces tight, eyes avoiding his. He didn't glare. He didn't smile. He simply watched. When it was time to deplane, he stood and gathered his children. Passengers stepped aside instinctively now, respect replacing doubt. Some nodded. Some murmured apologies. Some said nothing, carrying their discomfort with them. At the door, the captain waited. "Mr. Reed," he said solemnly, "this will be addressed." Daniel nodded once. "See that it is." Walking into the terminal, the noise rushed back, in announcements, rolling luggage, distant laughter. Life resumed as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Nia, Malik, and Jordan, something had shifted permanently. Malik held his father's hand tighter. "Next time," he said, "I won't be scared." Daniel squeezed back. "You don't have to rush that." Jordan looked up. "Can I still wear my hoodie?" Daniel smiled. "Always." Nia walked slightly ahead, shoulders straighter now, eyes sharper. She understood something she hadn't before, that silence could be broken, that belonging wasn't permission-based, and that dignity didn't need approval. Behind them, the plane waited for its next passengers, polished and quiet, ready to repeat its patterns unless someone interrupted them again. And somewhere between gates and baggage claim, a lesson followed them. Not heavy, not bitter, but firm. They had been questioned, they had been watched, and they had stayed exactly where they belonged.